Hello and welcome to the final episode of Mediate. It's been a long time coming, but at last our souls can finally be at peace after we've accomplished this great journey of watching video games and playing movies. For my final Mediate pick, I have picked the indie sensation and Kickstarter success story Hollow Knight, the Metroidvania Souls-like artistic cool game. What other Steam Workshop tags would it have? Anime.
I feel like atmospheric.
Atmospheric's a good one. Difficult. On sale as well because it's a ridiculously cheap game for how much money you get.
God, yeah, that is just one of the things you need to almost start off with it, where it's just like the value to enjoyment quality ratio is just ridiculous. Nothing beats it.
It destroys every AAA game ever made, like effortlessly. It's like what, £15 maybe?
Yeah, it's always £15, and you can always get it for less as well.
Yeah, £15 when it's not on sale, and it's on every platform you want to play, like on Nintendo Switch, all the new consoles, PC obviously. It runs perfectly on all of them. I don't know about Switch, but it works fine on my horrible laptop. It could run Hollow Knight, and it looks great. And it's this 40-hour long RPG epic that is like you get for like nothing. You get for like the price of like a big McDonald's meal. You know, that's not even the price of some League of Legends skins, and it's way more fun than any of them.
Oh my god, it gets depressing actually when you start comparing it with some of those like in-game purchases.
I don't
equivalents.
I don't know why Tony's saying that though, because Tony has so many hours in League of Legends that
Yeah. I have so many hours in League of Legends and I've enjoyed none of them, Ethan. However, my time with Hollow Knight, it's like a dream. It's like I've hit myself with the dream nail, which you unlock, and I've had a great time. So, to re-summarize, Hollow Knight, it's this Metroidvania Souls-like game where you explore this world of Hallow Nest, which is this looping setting that has like tons of shortcuts that you unlock. A lot of the game is about exploration and sort of finding your way, finding out how to get deeper into this. The story is told very minimally through like cutscenes and like vague I want to say item descriptions, even though they're not item descriptions, but you know, like small snippets of dialogue. You slowly piece together this sort of strange, like a post-apocalyptic setting that is, of course, filled with insects. You know, there's no humans; it's all little bugs. But you think a game about bugs, that's going to be gross. No, the art style is very cute and charming, and the fact that it's the entire sort of like look of the game is focused around like this like sort of like dark gothic insectoid world. You think that would get samey, but they actually do quite a lot of interesting things with it, and it helps keep the game quite focused visually.
Mm-hmm. Like, there's only two areas that are kind of similar, and that's Green Path and Queen's Gardens, and like I don't know. It feels right that they're kind of similar.
Yeah.
And everything
they're
else.
only really similar because they're kind of green areas.
Yeah,
very different.
yeah. But I guess it's similar in like it's green and overgrown, but like the challenge and feeling in each area is different. But like the fact that every other bit is so distinct and offers such different feelings as you're going around them.
Yeah, it's a very like varied world that it's a constant, you know, sort of joy to explore, as you're constantly motivated by the intense burning curiosity of like what's just around the corner. How do I get back to that one area that I can't access yet? You know, I will do the Metroidvania thing of unlocking the wall break ability to go back there when I find it. And even like most of like the Metroidvania upgrades, which it does a good job of like blending into this 2D action combat, where it's like, obviously like a double jump is useful in fighting dudes and also in accessing new areas. Things like that, like the dash, as well. They work quite well to keep like exploration being quite fun. But I just want to say, like, going into Hollow Knight, were any of you big Metroidvania fans? I know you did Castlevania a while ago. I gave up on that game.
we all did Castlevania apart
Yeah,
from Tony.
yeah. I did not want to play that game on my phone and could not work out how to get it to run anywhere else, and also just gave up on it. But I'm famously a Dark Souls super fan, even though I fucking never finished that game. Don't even like it that much. You guys, what's your thoughts on the Souls games, since they're a very clear sort of influence for Hollow Knight?
Oh, God, this is gonna be a 4-hour podcast.
We're doing the speedrun achievement.
Do you wanna give your opinion, because you've just gotten into those games?
So, what the question is to do with the similarities between the two? Is that what?
Yeah, like do you go in with like experience, or is this your first time feeling the Dark Souls?
I'll be honest with you, I can't remember
elements.
which one I played first out of Castlevania or Hollow Knight, but I think, considering that one of them was a massive influencer of the other, it's really interesting to see how far the genre has come as a whole over like a 15 to 20 year period, and how different mechanics come into the mix. Because I think I think something that Hollow Knight does really, really well, that I think Castlevania might lack a little bit, is I like the fact that in Castlevania you're basically stuck in a really big castle or a really big mansion, but because it's kind of one building, even though it's a big building, you don't really have that epic sense of scale that you would, where you feel like you're going through an entire kingdom. And the way that the game sort of tries to bring that to life with like the fast travel system and things like that, to make you just realize that actually what's been created here isn't just a hole underground or a cave underground. It's actually an entire kingdom that has so many nooks and crannies and small little secret areas and characters that you can find and talk to, and I guess in kind of a Souls-like fashion as well. There are just so many secrets and areas that you can do post-game and even during the game that you can kind of look up online, and you need 2 items to access this area, and then you get a fully fleshed out part of the game that adds to the experience. I think is really cool. I guess White Palace is probably or White Castle is one of the best example of that, because I think it is a platformer, but I don't think until White Palace it really feels like a game that's testing your platforming abilities that much. It is, I guess, combat based. It doesn't have the most dense combat system, I think, but it is testing your ability to fight these fierce foes. But then you get to an area of the game and you realise that actually there's a whole new element to Hollow Knight that you hadn't really thought about as much, which is that it can be a really, really good test of your platforming precision. And I just like how the game style kind of varies throughout the game as well, and it isn't samey. And I think Castlevania, and I presume the Metroid games are a little bit like that. Hollow Knight does find ways to spice up the formula a little bit, and I appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
I remember which one you played first, Ethan. I think a lot of my Hollow Knight backstory is like early on was like less based in the game and more based around like this podcast. But I remember you playing Castlevania, like starting Castlevania, and you were really enjoying it. And then you just started playing Hollow Knight and like dropped Castlevania until you finished Hollow Knight and then went back to Castlevania. And I was like, no, you got to do the Castlevania first. But it's crazy because they're 20 years apart, and and they are like obviously the same genre. But what I think is really cool is you look at Castlevania, which was, I guess, like not very traditional for the time. Like Symphony of the Night was a 2D game in an era of when like 3D games were big, but it was still like a big game. Like a lot of people worked on it. Whereas Hollow Knight, it's an indie game. There are obviously like different like artists who kind of worked on like the localization and all the translation stuff and like the music, but fundamentally it was made by 3 people. And like it's so cool that like a game of this size and scale that is the game in my life I have probably rolled credits on the most. I know because you can't skip them, so I've seen them so many times. Yeah, it like the amount of stuff to do here is staggering. Like I have beaten this game, like absolutely rinsed 3 times through now. One of which being a kind of speed run. And yeah, it's fantastic. Not only the content in the game, which we'll talk about, but also like Ethan touched upon the post-game content, which no game has the same amount of stuff to do after allegedly rolling credits. And not even like that, but like the amount of content here and like the free DLCs, which because they're free DLCs, and I played them after they came out, I consider basically part of the base game. Yeah, incredible. Like God Home, every game needs God Home as an expansion of just like basically a bunch of impossible challenges, so you can just test your skills against all the bosses. It's crazy because this game isn't a boss game, but because of I've spent so many hours on God Home content since the game's come out, I worry that I'm gonna keep talking about like how good the boss design is and like some of my favorite boss fights. But yeah, it's got a lot to it.
I think that boss design is a really crucial part of this kind of game because with the Souls games that I've been playing quite a lot at the moment, pretty much the highlight of those games are the boss fights because they're the times in the games where I feel my heart pumping the most. I feel the most amount of intensity. I feel the most amount of reward and fulfillment playing. And I think I had that with Hollow Knight 2. So the fact that it does have the ability to go back and replay bosses just isolated out of the main story of the game is a fantastic idea because it gives you the option to really master those boss fights, and then also, if you want, develop new strategies for fighting them. And that's something that I think would be amazing in the Souls games because so many of my favourite bosses in them are really, really late game bosses, and it kind of sucks that... I mean, it doesn't suck because they're still good, but if I want to fight a boss right at the end of the game, I've got to play 20-25 hours worth of content just to fight that boss. And the fact that Hollow Knight gives you the option in a really accessible manner after you've completed the main game, I think is just a stroke of genius.
Yeah, it's cool because we're talking about like the Metroidvania Souls combo. You look at Dark Souls 1 and how it of all the Souls game, it is the most Metroidvania-y, if you could say that. Mm-hmm. Like the way you traverse that world, they definitely designed it to be almost like a 3D Metroidvania, but like not a fully successful one. So I like that Hollow Knight almost is like, let's do a Metroidvania, but then take some of the really cool parts from Dark Souls. Some work better than others. Like they took the corpse run mechanic, which is like maybe one of the weaker parts of Hollow Knight. That doesn't gel quite well with like a pure Metroidvania. But then, like you say, the boss, like adding the boss fights and like kind of gating like new challenges with boss fights, which is kind of what the Souls games are kind of synonymous for. I think that kind of
it's a perfect example of I think game designers knowing exactly the kind of target audience of their games and then giving them the kind of thing they want, because Hollow Knight, as well as a game that you would probably really enjoy speedrunning, as you said, you yourself, Harry, you've done. You play it really, well, not really, but a big part of why you play it is for those bosses. So it's just really good to see that they know exactly the kind of people who would play those games, and then give them the option to do sort of things that are tailored exactly to that kind of experience. It's very cool.
They also take the other thing from Dark Souls 1, which the other Dark Souls games never did again, which is the ability to traverse the world, like really, like essentially have the satisfaction of knowing the world map off by heart. Hollow Knight has a mapping system, so it's different, but I mean it's very cool as well. But like knowing like, oh, I know the quickest route to get to here, and being able to like put that together, and like it kind of like they almost like saw that Dark Souls 1 did that and thought adding that to like the Metroidvania formula of like allowing players to be like, oh, I can get here slightly quicker by doing this little shortcut I know, and like just the immense satisfaction that gives you in like exploring and traversing the world. I think is one of the kind of like niche things Hollow Knight does that I don't think any other game really does.
The one of the satisfying moments is when you sort of change from the like compass charm is something I must have for my build for getting around, to just being like, I know where I am. I don't need this. Which, well, for me happens. I'm not sure exactly when, but reasonably early on. It's like, actually, I think it just makes more sense to be more powerful, and I can kind of make my way around. But yeah, I think one of the standout things for me, though, is more the sense of exploration and the areas rather than the bosses. I think that's possibly with perhaps what I want a bit more from games. That to me, the standout moments is ending up in the deep nest, stumbling across the howling cliffs, falling deeper and deeper into the abyss. It's like all of these moments of discovery of the map are, to me, what are the big moments that stick out in my brain. Possibly that's because they were gated behind those bosses, and things like that. But at least the highlights to me and the things that come to me is just the feelings in each of those areas, that feeling of exploration as well. And like, I've discovered something new. I'm learning something about this world. And that as well mixed in with the as you begin to like map it out, and the places that you have been added to your map once you've bought the map from Conifer, and the fact that the way you map is actually tied into a character that you talk to and you fall in love with. It's and he's part of the music as well because he whistles. It's just everything is so well tied together that I started this sentence with one well-formed idea, and I've just gone off into a tangent and ended up somewhere completely else.
It's because you played the game like a normal person, Johnny. Like a normal person is like has all the opinions you have, and if you look at the pie chart of the things you do in Hollow Knight, bosses is maybe like 5% of that. But then if you're like a psychopath like me and you've spent like you've spent at least 30 hours just fighting all the bosses in God Home, like you just have this warped perception that a lot of the game involves that when it really doesn't.
Yeah, I think it is a massive strength of the game that it does appeal to so many people for so many different reasons, I'd say.
But you have the correct reasons
that exploration.
Everyone else does.
You've got the boss fight. You've got the speedrunning
Yeah.
community, which is just like I enjoy watching a lot of the videos from some of the speedrunners or people who run challenges on Hollow Knight, and it feels very well curated for all of those audiences. It doesn't matter that it's 5% of the pie chart. Like, it's still a great game from that point of view.
Everything's
I mean,
great.
it's firing on all cylinders. Every element really helps to tie in and like complement each other. I do want to definitely agree with what Jono said about like how you get this great sense of place from the exploration of the world, and how it ties in with like the subtle world building. I think one of my favorite moments was like realizing that like, oh yeah, of course the City of Tears, it's always raining there because it's below a huge lake. Oh, and I had that realization. I was like, oh my god, it's like I didn't even say like it's like Dark Souls.
It's
I said
like Dark Souls.
It's like Hollow Knight, because I don't even think Dark Souls has a moment that's that good,
Yeah.
where you're like understanding of the world from exploring it.
No, I think the
Dark Souls
moment
is the
Yeah.
cliche one, doesn't it?
Is it the one I was going to say? But you're done.
Yeah, when you
Arrow.
take the lift
Yeah.
down.
Dark Souls has
Yeah.
Dark Souls has great
Violent.
shortcuts, but I think it's like that City of Tears moment where it was like, oh, this actually makes sense as like a space.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the strengths where it's like, oh, there's this lake, it drops down, that's why it's raining. Underneath that is a sewer system, because you've got to collect the water, and then, oh, this is the area where they bury their dead, this is an area where they've got a mining operation. Like, it makes sense instead of the kind of weird abstract way I get the impression from Dark Souls games, where it's just like, oh, I took this elevator up from hell and I'm back home.
Yeah.
Like,
I do like the Dark Souls world. Sorry, but I think I do have much more trouble picturing like because they're both post-apocalyptic settings. Like I have a very tough time imagining how Dark Souls would look if it was like in its heyday, in its prime, you know, in like before the age of like, oh, everyone's gone mad and insane and old and dead, right? Like you constantly see fragments of it, whereas I think Hollow Knight has like a much better job of showing you like you can see like the how things used to be in like the wreckage of this world. I think that a lot of that does come from the fact that it's like doubles down on being like a very believable space as far as medieval magical insect societies go. There's like they've committed to like, okay, well, they had a tram system, they had a network of stags they used to get about, they had a city, they had a garden, and it just creates a nice little world.
It is really cool how cohesive the world feels, in the sense that everything feels glued together in a really, really strong way. But then also, like we've just talked about, with all the different kind of systems they have, like the sewer system and the lake that's just above the City of Tears, and that's why it's always raining. These are all just little things that you could pick up playing the game casually or watching a lore video on YouTube. But it doesn't really force the lore down your throat or make you talk to like an NPC for half an hour to get a very cryptic understanding of the plot. I mean, I'll admit that the plot is kind of ambiguous, and you have an idea of your purpose in it all, but not that this is a complaint or anything. It's just I'm glad that you don't have to actively take part in the story as in you don't have to actively take part in the lore, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to have a really, really good time. Yeah. That can just be something you can choose to look into further if that's something that interests you.
The fact that the game just sort of opens with kind of nothing. You just sort of, you drop down into a place. You walk right because that's all you can do. You read a couple of signs that are kind of vague, stumble across a village, and then talk to someone that's just kind of like, yeah, you can probably jump down that well. And then like there's nothing on your mini map. Like there's no go here, talk to this person. Like it's only after you've explored for a while that you then come across the thing that then tells you, oh yeah, you want to head to these 3 places. And when you do that, they're places just wildly so far away from the map you've explored that it's just kind of like, wow. Well, I've got so much more to do.
Yeah.
I guess it takes from Souls there as well, right? With the way it tells its story is like very Souls-like, as well as the kind of, I'm talking about Dark Souls 1 here, like the go ring 2 bells kind of objective that you kind of get early on, of just a pointer to start navigating the world. But I also think like it does have more like really cool scripted moments, especially as you get later on. There's some very cool kind of storytelling sequences. That kind of tell like a kind of wordless plot.
Yeah, and I do think that there is a lot of story that's told by just like small moments of atmosphere. Like there's an NPC Quirrell, where like the safe spot, the bonfires of this universe, are like these little benches. Which, by the way, every bench where you go and you just rest at it is like the most like comfy looking spot like that's ever been penned in a video game. They look like they would restore your health. You know, they restore my health when I'm playing the game. When I see a cute little bench, and you let the Hollow Knight do his little idle animation where he just bobs his head down, taking a little nap. Anyway, there's one moment like that where you find like another NPC on one of the benches, and you can just sort of just sit there for a moment. And you're looking over the City of Tears. You know, this ruin that has just been left, and like I think the camera does like a slight pan where you can see more of the rain. Maybe I'm just a sucker for rain, but that's a very, very powerful.
And the music's amazing in the City of Tears as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an amazing track. There's like
the biggest area of the game, possibly. I don't know. Deep Nest might be bigger, but I mean, it feels like the capital city of Hallow Nest is what I'm trying to say. Like it's right in the center of the map, and it kind of has that game opening up sort of feel to it when you first get there as well.
I think when you enter, it locks you in until you've kind of and the only way you can get out is basically by like either beating quite a tough boss or being kind of good enough at navigating the world to kind of. I think that's also the thing you interact with that kind of gives you like the hint to like keep progressing. And it's kind of, yeah, like you said, it's where the game starts to branch. Like it's pretty linear up to that point, actually. Yeah, I think when we're talking about the storytelling, another thing that the game does really well is it allows you to kind of tell like emergent stories of like, oh, I was here, and you know, and then I lost my geo and I had to make like a daring run back, or you know, like I managed to do this and kind of create those moments, as well as having those very really cool like moments where like the gameplay like ties in to like story stuff. So like in Deep Nest, which is like everyone has a story of like, oh, I went to Deep Nest and I wasn't prepared, but then there's also the story of like you finally get to that bench on Deep Nest and that's like a trap, and then you get stuck on it, which is amazing. The other one, which is the banker, where the game's geo system makes you like so like cautious about like hoarding geo, especially when you're first playing, that the idea of having a banking system is so like, it feels so good that the moment when you go to the banker and the banker's not there, it's just like, god, it's such like a gut punching moment. It's so funny,
though.
like look like in hindsight. And also the other thing with that is when you're doing speedrun stuff, that actually optimizes it, because when you give the banker that money, you actually get money back, like you get interest on it. So like being able to use that as like a mechanic later by giving her the 5,000 geo and knowing like you can come back late, like you just have a bank of 7,000 later when you need to buy stuff, is cool. But yeah, I love those like little kind of storytelling moments that are told through gameplay, and like how they kind of, even though we all have the same ones, when you're playing the game, you feel like you're the only person kind of almost like going on this journey, like, oh, you know.
Yeah, so it does feel very personal. I do have such like a strong impact like of the memory of like the very early section of like you're just chasing Hornet through like the green path, and like eventually you chase her and you like get to like one of the first like good boss fights in the game, where it's Hornet's one early on, and that teaches you so much about like the dynamics of the combat system even before you've got most of like the cool toys, you know, the double jump or the dash or whatever. It's just such a great like song and dance boss fight that's a great like capstone for that area, and like a great like introduction. Like it's probably only like an hour and a bit to get to that point before you go on to the rest of the Hollow Knight journey, but it encapsulates so much of what makes the rest of the game great. You know, it's the great exploration moment, a cool fight, a cool sense of mystery, and then an upgrade that you get which recontextualizes, you know, all the moments that you've been past. I think, what is it that you get from Hornet? Is it the double jump?
Dash.
Yeah. Oh, it's the dash. Yeah, it's the dash. Which that recontextualizes every like ledge you've seen that's been slightly too far out of reach. But you're like, oh my god, all of those places. I'm just so curious and so interested to just go back and see, you know, where they lead.
The thing that I like about that is that the sort of thing that could have very easily happened for me with this game is that I tend to feel quite overwhelmed playing games very quickly if they're very big and expansive and you have a lot of freedom to roam wherever you want. So this kind of game does feel a little bit scary in that way, in the sense that, oh my god, this ledge here, if I go away from it because I can't access it now, I might forget about it later on and I'll miss something down there that could potentially really, really help me out. But even though the game inhibits you from going in certain directions quite early on, it doesn't do it in such a frequency that you ever feel just completely lost for me or completely overwhelmed. The game guides you well enough, especially towards the start of the game when you don't really have many abilities, so that you do feel like the game is holding your hand in a bit, not in an overbearing way, just that it's nice to feel not lost, and that if there's something I can't access now, there aren't too many of them that it'll be hopeless for me to try and remember everything, because I actually did a good job trying to remember the different areas and passages that I couldn't access to, and kept a mental reminder to go back to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm quite appreciative of the game doing that.
Yeah, there's something I noticed. There's in Jedi Fallen Order, there's one particularly egregious bit of that kind of comeback later, where on the first planet you're at, there's an optional boss that you can fight, and you can do it before you've even picked up the Estus flask equivalent. And your reward for that is is there's two chests. One you can open immediately and has, I don't know, like a lightsaber, the hilt different thing. And then there's another chest which you need a later upgrade to open. And it's just such a massive slap in the face moment of like, well done, you took out this boss that is actually hard even if you came later. Your reward is nothing, and once you've got forward on the main plot, now you can open another chest. And like having that moment there be like, oh wow, this is the best example of how to do this terribly, where you haven't rewarded me for taking on this challenge early. You've just said you need to come back here later. Where it's like, there's, I don't know. I bring that up just to say how well it is in Hollow Knight that there's no moment that feels like that at all. It feels like you're rewarded for your exploration. If there is a ledge that's too high or something like that when you're going around, it's not a kind of feeling. It does actually manage to get the okay, I'll come back here later.
There's always something cool behind every corner as well, like because it's like it's a very, it feels vast, but it's also very tightly constructed. Your exploration is always rewarded, so you always feel like you're constantly making progress and discovering new things.
Yeah, the other good thing is there's not really anything that feels bad when you pick it up, apart from the rancid eggs, but then like they're obviously rancid eggs when you see them. But it's like the things that you can pick up would be more notches, charms. I guess you've got the like health and mana, well, soul sort of expansion things that you can find. There's things that give you a lot of geo that will then allow you to buy things from shops, which are again also all very useful items because they're also like charms, notches, health upgrades, all of that. So there's no, because that was the other annoying thing going back to Fallen Order is you open a chest and usually it's just your lightsaber hilt can be a different style. It's like I can't see the hilt though when I play.
Yeah. It's great that Hollow Knight doesn't have like a granular level up system, because I think one, that would just be a balancing nightmare. I think the fact that it's just like technically much more like your overall power curve is much more small compared to like a Dark Souls character that goes from level 1 to level 99. Makes the idea of doing things in slightly different orders much more feasible. It also means that like the item upgrades that you do get, instead of being very very granular, like you now deal +2 damage with slashing weapons, it's now like, oh, this is like the healing upgrade that lets me do it way quicker. This means that
it's quite an obvious transformation.
Yeah, they're all like, I'm now going to look at the game in a different way because these upgrades like enable me to do different things, you know.
Yeah.
They spur your curiosity.
And the only sort of upgrade that I can think that is a kind of just adding stuff is your nail upgrades. But the fact that there is no like actual values written out, the kind of only way you tell just playing the game normally how much damage you do and how much health enemies has is how many hits does it take to take this person out. And I think it's probably deliberate that the enemies that you have to fight going to and back from the nailsmith in such a different way that each time you get an upgrade, it's notably different how much damage you're doing. How for a certain area, a certain enemy, it's now it's just 2 instead of 3 to take this one out. Good bit of world design. Not world design, but game design.
I just wanted to say, we kind of went past this, but something else that I quite like about how the game basically forces you down a certain route towards the start, is the fact that I feel like the game does a really good job signposting if something is something that you can't access straight away. Like, if you see a ledge and you can't reach it, you're not an idiot. You know you need a double jump for
Yeah.
that. And it's really, really good because it means that you don't fuck about trying to experiment earlier on, even though that can sometimes be quite good and quite handy. But a case in point of when this isn't done as well is earlier on I was watching Harry play a bit of Dark Souls 2. And in classic Dark Souls style, where it's sometimes very obscure what you've got to do in certain areas, there was a big door, and it looked like a door that you could go through, but not in a conventional way. Like maybe you had to charge through it or blow it up or something. And we weren't there for ages, but we were there for enough time that we were kind of questioning: is this a door we can go through or not? And at the end of the day, if you're doing that, that's not like the greatest thing ever as a game design thing if you can't tell whether it's a door you can and can't go through. Whereas in Hollow Knight, it's very, very obvious if something is off limits and you have to come back later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's tons of like great moments of like basically just like mechanical foreshadowing. If you're like you fight that one enemy that will put its shell around if you get too close to it, and you're like, if when I get a ranged attack, I should come back here. And then what do you know? You get like the attack. It teaches you to defeat that enemy, and the whole time you're like, I just want to run back there and I want to go and kill that creature.
You can. Just because I've watched too many videos about random things in Hollow Knight, I think with an even without an upgraded reach, there is a very slim middle ground where you can actually hit it. But like no, it's well enough done that nobody's gonna do that. But also is technically a thing you could try and do as a speedrunning strategy, but I don't think it's not reliable enough to do quickly. But that's something I kind of wanted to add about the ledges is they're obvious enough that as me as a layperson, I don't approach it and think, oh, I can get over that if I really wiggle and try. But it is the sort of ledge that speedrunners can get over by deliberately dying and then using their shades to then pogo up, or a whole bunch of other strategies you can do when you really know the game's mechanics. So probably not deliberately put in, but
they were left in, though. I think, like, I've heard the developers talk about how they leave stuff in.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah.
Do you think it's deliberate that you have to die at that section to be able to get to that ledge that's higher up? Do you think that's something they deliberately implemented for people to try and figure out if you were experimenting enough?
From half remembering a Game Maker's Toolkit video, I think they did leave. They did put certain ledges in certain places, knowing that speedrunners would be able to do skips. And they tweaked enemy placement to help speedrunners a little bit, which is really cool. They seem like very cool guys that made it.
Yeah, it's very, very player friendly in a lot of the ways, where it will just like give you eventually the utility that you need, that you want. Like you get shortcuts, you get upgrades eventually that you want. Like the whole, like as Harry said, like the whole God Home expansion is just like a thing that you want out of a game. You're like, I wish I could do this. Oh, I can. Nice.
Yeah, they set the bar so high for like every game basically, and like there are things like we've talked about mechanics without fully exploring them, like the mapping system and how every time you enter a new area you don't know where you're going, and that adds like this extra layer of tension about exploring, and then the way it builds in that relief of Cornifer. And Johnny talked about the music, but like the way it builds character with that. And then like you mentioned the charm notch system, but like the way that you can like you slot them into like the finite spaces, so like every decision feels like earned, and like it feels like you're giving something up to do something. You're like, oh, I can heal faster, but that would mean my nail is shorter, and every decision feels earned. And I've just beaten Pure Vessel after about 10 attempts, so I feel very happy right now. It's a great game. What a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, additional things with Cornifer. So his paper trail that will lead you to him, and also his whistling on most maps, apart from Deep Nest, where he's hiding. And that means you can walk past him and then get lost in there yourself without a map because he's hiding. Just the fact as well that adds in multiple ways to that kind of feeling of the hostility and scariness that is in the Deep Nest when you first sort of go there. Where it's like, yeah, even this character who's like happily humming to himself all of the time doesn't do that here. He's scared here, and that can either mean you get a bit scared if you find him and realize that he's doing that, or if you miss him completely, then you're scared because you've not got a map for this area and you have no idea where you are. Another bit of good design.
There's also the great, like, there's multiple ways into every area. So Deepness is funny because you can just drop into it, like bang in the middle, which is very cruel. Like I one of my big memories of Hollow Knight was the fact that I played this game last, and you guys were like hyping up certain moments. So I was always like, I always kind of went in with an attitude of like oh, it's all right, you know, and like let's see what this is about. But I remember you was talking about
What's all this then?
Yeah, exactly. And like I definitely have, like, I'll talk about it later, but I definitely have like two experiences of like playing like the game for the first time and then like rediscovering the game a few months later, and like that's when it became one of my favorites. But I remember you guys always talking about like a tram pass, and then I never needed to like get that tram pass. Like I found it quite late on because I'd obviously found like different ways into each area, which I always thought was really cool. The other thing you guys always hyped up was like, you was like, oh, the hive's so hard. And it's just a normal area. Just a
bees.
I think I've died once in the hive, like ever.
It's a hard area, Harry. You're just good. You're just good at games.
Yeah, that's another thing. This is one of the first kind of really difficult games I was ever like able to do. I was never like a fan of like really tough games, and I like bounced off Dark Souls, and then this is probably like the first like kind of hard game that I like beat. And then like it was this, and then doing Bloodborne, and then I've kind of got really into the Souls games, and then kind of coming back to this, and now like I really enjoy like trying to do all like the toughest challenges this game has. You know, like I was just fighting Pure Vessel to see if I could. Like I still had that muscle memory, and like I'd say that's like one of the toughest bosses I've fought in any game. But it like, especially Nightmare King Grim, like it's these like really tricky fights, but the mechanics are so polished, and they're so like, every time you take damage, it's always your fault in this game, because there's not that many like different mechanics going on. You know, it's 2D, not 3D. It feels very fair. It's like a very good gateway game, I guess, to starting to play difficult games, I'd say.
Yeah, and it is nice that like there is almost like this like ramping off point of, if you don't want to do any of the really hard points, the game could just end. You know, you just beat regular Hollow Knight without like the Void Soul or any of that.
Nothing wrong with that.
You don't. Yeah, you don't.
Yeah,
you don't. Yeah. To be fair, that's how I ended the game the first time I played it, and I still haven't beat Radiance because my controller died as I was doing it, and I was like, actually, I'll do this another time. But yeah, like it's good that it is optional. Like it's like these great like post game content moments of like the people who are really obsessed with Hollow Knight. Let's give them something that they can really sink their teeth into. You know, the Godmaster update. You know, the Grim Troop free update. You know, things like the Path of Pain or whatever, or the optional content. What's it called? Like the Flowers mini quest.
Yes.
You know, they're great. They're all great things of like, okay, people who love like the world, who know how to get around in the best ways. You know, let's give them this tiny little quest that they can do. Let's see if they can give the flower to the conifer in, was it conifer? Oh, it's Elderbug in Dirtmouth for no reason other than to just say that they did it.
Waste of a run that
I
was.
did it just for fun, Ethan, because I could.
See, with that flower, the best attempt I've had with that was I got in order to complete it properly, I went to literally the final bit where you literally just have to jump over some set of thorns, and I mucked up that jump.
It's so cruel. That placement of those thorns is so cruel.
And I've not been able to get back there again, and so it's just like, okay, that's it.
But yeah, it is ultimately like optional, that part. You know, if you give it a go and it's not for you, then you can just leave it. You know.
I think the biggest credit I can give this game is the fact that I was never like really into like hard games and thought like, oh, I'm never going to do this. And then I've done all this stuff 3 times now. Like I've done that flower quest 3 separate times, and I've chosen to do that in my own spare time because when I start playing Hollow Knight, I just want to see it through to the end. You know, like it really is that like captivating, and like I keep wanting to see what's around every corner. and it always upsets me when I kind of reach the edge of the world and I just want to push beyond it and like go to a new area.
I
And
know. You're at that
I
Kingdom's Edge. and
really
you-
can't wait for Silksong. Like to get more of this type of game and like how good that looks. You know.
Interesting thing, because hearing you describe it as hard, which will be weird for me to say this, having, I've not been able to defeat Radiance. Because I didn't realize how to activate the Nightmare Grim troop stuff. I haven't even like done that stuff. Haven't done any of like the God Home stuff. So maybe it's wrong for me to say I don't think this is that hard a game.
Did you not find? I remember for me, the boss that I really got stuck on for a while was Watcher Knights.
Oh yeah, maybe it's just because it's been too long.
Yeah, I think
Watcher
what
Knights
for me,
were hell.
What helps me with this game and why I think it's a good gateway game into getting into hard games is I'm very bad at dodging. Like I'm not very good at platformers. Like I'm not amazing at them, and I always take damage in like fights. So that's kind of what put me off about games where if you have a finite amount of health, and if I could never like make it far enough and to the boss fights. Whereas this game with the soul system and the ability to either do more damage with soul or you get a bit of health back, that balancing act I think is so genius. And for me, Grub Song is a must. Like the ability to get soul when I get hit. Without that, I don't think I would have done half the stuff I've managed to do in this game. I think that like it's very forgiving in that way, and it's another one of the systems alongside every other system in this game that's very like balanced and puts the power in the player's hands.
I don't think I ever used Grub Song really. So I'm mostly just bringing it up to say that it is that how good the charm system is that you build your own builds if you're more of a dodging, not get hit. If you're more of a
yeah.
like,
I'm gonna
back.
get hit a lot of times. I want to be able to heal quickly.
Yeah,
and
soul
have soul to
capture
do those heals.
is one of my favorite ones. Just you just get more soul because I need it. Give it to me.
Currently, I'm running Soul Catcher, Grub Song, and Quick Focus because I know I'm gonna get hit.
I love quick focus. God,
Yeah, I think the speedrunner sort of build is you go for like Shaman
Stone.
Yeah. Shaman Stone, Abyss Shriek, like Desolate Dive.
It doubles your damage that your magic can do.
And the spells are already
it's the
quite
quickest
strong.
way. Yeah. So
you can destroy Radiance with it. It's actually funny how quickly you can kill Radiance using Shaman Stone.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I think you can see the difference between someone more amateur like me playing it, where I mostly just use the soul to heal. Occasionally, I'll probably by accident do a offensive spell, and then people who know what they're doing just spamming the spells, dancing around. Yeah. That it's just such a brilliant system, really. The sort of between using it for health or damage, and as well just within some of the boss fights where they get staggered at certain points, that gives you the opportunity to stand off to the side and heal, or just go right. I'm going to wail on them. It's just very well done.
Yeah, it's one of the most forgiving mechanics, and it's I think you could talk about every part of this game though, and I think they've made an interesting decision with how they implement it. Like even like we've said with the map, but like the fact that they made the map like you have to buy a pen and then like map it yourself by resting at the benches, which are kind of this game's equivalent of bonfires. And just every small like thing in this world is like earned, and it's like. It feels weird to call it tactile, but like it's like the Fury Road of games, Like it's all been given such careful consideration. And like it's honestly just like it's polished to like an absurd degree. It's almost perfect, to be honest.
Yeah, and just again, just as you're exploring, like the quiet moments that you're constantly rewarded with of just like an incredibly stunning visual backdrop, like a single screenshot of Hollow Knight could destroy all of fucking what's it called, Digital Horizon Zero Dawn. Like just like all those thousands of man hours put in by hundreds of people just can't compare to like a single like well balanced screenshot that like is that is just this lovely like drawn style that comes after a nice like that is like from a quiet moment after a hard fought part of exploration and combat and trying to find your way around. Just
It helps that the music is as good as it is.
Yeah,
Like City of Tears, we've already mentioned, but I love the Mantis Lord's music.
Yeah,
It's probably my favorite track.
Yeah, the fact that I think one of the moments where it really started to hit for me was City of Tears, just walking in, hearing that music, seeing this area with the rain, and just how different it felt to everywhere else I'd been. And then Mantis Lords, just anyway, probably my favorite boss fight there, and just works so well with that music.
Yeah.
Continue your list of every piece of music in the game.
Mantis Lords and Grim, both versions of Grim, are the two bosses that kind of epitomize like the dance-like nature of the combat, of like turn taking and like learning your opponent's moves. Which you could say is most boss fights, but especially in Hollow Knight because it's so polished. Like it really is like turn taking, and then as you get better, you'll learn like the little like opportunities to get extra damage in, which is why the God Home is so good, because you fight the bosses so many times. I've fought Groz Mother about 1,000 times by now.
I think the boss fight for me that epitomizes this sort of great like dance structure isn't one of like the big famous ones. It's Traitor Lord.
Yes,
it's not one of like the super hard ones.
It's very hard for me. Well, when I first,
in my opinion,
it took me a while.
I don't find it.
When you learn the trick, it's fine. But
because the trick for Traitor Lord is you just got to stay really close to them, and that means you've got to dash through them and stay really close to them, and that means the boss fight just looks like this cool epic sword fight where you're this tiny little bug taking on someone that's like 8 times your size, and you're swinging down, and you're like, you're fighting them, as equals. It's just a really cool, fantasy to play into. Like, that's quite late into the game, you're now like rewarded from your mastery of the system of just being like, I'm now fighting this boss. I'm not like a little bug scurrying around. I'm not like David versus Goliath where I'm like waiting for the big opening. I'm like full force, like fighting him the whole time, and it's a great fight.
One of the going back to the Mantis Lords, I think one of the things that makes that so great is what happens after you beat them, that they stop, they jump back to their thrones and then bow, and then the gate opens, and also all of the mantises in the village no longer attack you, but just that feeling of just that feeling of like, I don't know, to win a boss fight and then I have these guys' respect. I can now go into hell.
Or you can be a bit of a psychopath like Harry and just murder them all anyway.
I feel so bad that I didn't realize at first that the rest of the mantises were bowing to me. So I did murder a few before I was like, oh wait, you're not hostile anymore. Oh, I'm sorry.
All the pieces of music that we've talked about that are really good, I agree, are really good because they all kind of tie into a pretty consistent idea of what Hollow Knight music is. There's strings involved, stuff like that. It all feels like a consistent tone with music. But the one that I think is the most different, and this is why I really, really like it, because it's very haunting and chilling, is the Soul Asylum music, which is...
that is not what I thought you were going to say.
What do you think I was going to say?
I think you said the Collector's theme.
Oh, no. Oh, my God. The fucking Collector's theme is so bad. No, I really like the Soul Asylum one because it's a really hard area. And I think that the music that goes along with it is really... what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, I guess haunting is the right way to put it, because, I mean, the prominent instrument used is an organ. And you get to this area, and it's kind of a subsection of the City of Tears, but it really does feel like its own kind of small area. Like it has a really strong, I guess, sense of identity. And I think Hollow Knight has a lot of those where you'll go to a massive area, and then you'll go to a smaller area inside that area, like a subsection, and it will feel like a really well-defined, well-controlled area. I also think... there's another area a little bit like that in the sewers where you find, I think it's called Isthmus Tir, where you kind of walk around the sewers, and it's this really sort of dark kind of really sort of dirty area where you can't really see very well, and there are all these really menacing little creatures that just seem like the sort of scum of Hallow Nest in one area. And then you go to Isthmus Tier, and it's just this kind of nice safe haven around all of this, where you get an item that basically lets you explore other areas. And I think I think that's really, really good, because I think it would be very easy to just feel like every area you go, every corridor you're in, every room that you're in, you could just kind of copy and paste it and say, all right, that corridor, it's now going to be here. But in every area, there are sub areas, there are kind of secrets within secrets, and you won't find all of them unless you're looking very, very closely. But I love that they all feel distinct from the area that you're in, as well as each other. It's really, really cool.
I think it speaks a lot to, just thinking of it now, just a whole, so it's the visual design of the areas, it's the sound design, meaning not just the music, but just thinking of the waterways. I think for a lot of that, there's this kind of reverby, echoey effect that just feels like I'm in an enclosed sewer right now. And then like the sounds of the enemies that are there, the fact that they are these kind of parasites that when you kill them, they split in half, and then both ends go for you.
That was a great surprise, though. You know, when it happens the first time.
A lot of the sound design for the enemies makes them very impactful. Like, alongside what they do, like that enemy that goes "Ray" and slams into you and hits you for 2 masks. Like, I'm currently trying to do a boss, and I have my audio muted, and I'm finding it way harder. And I realize how much like the subtle sound cues like aid you in combat as well. And I love this. Even like the friendly sounds, like all the weird language they speak. You know, the little things they say, like how I like Hornet's language as well. Yeah. You know,
Vegeta. That's iconic.
Sure. Get good. Sure. It's great.
Yeah,
it's very charming.
Got Sly with his Baccaragio. You know.
Yeah. Oh man, Sly. Yeah, so many of the NPCs, they're just these lovable little guys. Man. There's that miner that slowly goes insane.
Yeah,
oh my god, break my heart.
I know. Yeah, there's such a overwhelming sense of like melancholy and sadness that comes from a lot of Hollow Knight that I don't find like off-putting. It's just like I don't know, like how some people probably watch sad films. You know, I listen to like the first like track of like the Dirt Mouth bit. I'm just like, yeah, this is what a great tragedy that this once amazing place has gone to ruin.
There's like a good combination of the cuteness and the creepiness in its design, and also like its like storytelling. Like a good moment of that is like rescuing the kind of cute little grubs, and then you get the grub where you break it and it tries to kill you, and then also when you've got all the grubs and then like you go back in that room and they've just all been eaten. So you're like, okay, that's really fucked up. But then the achievement's called Metamorphosis, so kind of like imply, like you're like, okay,
it does imply.
It's not as bad as it looks. Another moment that you guys probably didn't experience because like you have to be a psychopath to do it. But if you do your slam down attack down the well, you kind of destroy that sign.
Menderbug.
Yeah, if you keep doing it, eventually you'll kill someone called like a Menderbug, who's like a little guy that fixes the sign. And then
really
you can
funny.
you can go to his house and like read his diary about how much he like loves his job, like fixing that sign. And there's just like these like very like cute but really dark moments like sprinkled throughout that I think create a real good sense of tone.
Yeah, I mean, you can just see him, and then he like runs away quickly.
To get the kill on him, though, consistently.
Yeah,
I think
you need to be trying.
Yeah, I know because I've done it, Johnny. I've killed the man.
Monster. But yeah, that is just one of those things where when I first heard like someone describing it, I was like, this is just a meme, and I was like, oh wait, no, this is real in the game. It's not just someone making a joke about how the signs magically repair. It is a semi not serious part of the lore.
good game.
The real reason I love this game is because it has something that I keep saying should be in everything, which is an underground gladiator pit. An automatic 10 straight.
They found the way to fit in the underground fight pit arc in. Yeah, it's great. So many of those extra post-game challenges, like end-game challenges, it's a lot of fun, even though they're impossible.
Yeah, so
To the Moon was definitely missing an underground gladiator pit.
So for me, like I said, I feel like you guys like had played the game before me, and I did enjoy it, and I was like, yeah, it is good, but it wasn't one of my favorite games of all time. And then COVID happened, and I was like, one night decided I'm gonna try Radiance, and just spent hours on it, and was like, this is impossible, like, oh, I'm bad at this game, and then went to bed, and like the next morning, I managed to do Radiance first try, and was like, oh my god, I've done Radiance. And
you
then
downloaded the skills overnight.
I did. I downloaded the muscle memory.
It's
you
in a
put
dream.
the textbook onto your pillow.
I did. I did it. I learned the moves. Yeah, it was like I was seeing through the Matrix. And then after that, just going through and doing all like the toughest challenges, like even like the mundane things, like hunting down every charm notch, every mask shard, every charm, doing all the like obviously doing Nightmaking Grim, doing the Trial of the Fool, which is like really hard, and then once you've done that, you kind of get to like the God Home Pantheons, which are almost like a game into themselves. And I managed to do that on my Switch playthrough is about 80 hours long, and I reached 111%. But for the fourth Pantheon, you had to do a really tough boss run, and then at the end of it fight Pure Vessel. And I thought I'm never going to be able to do this. I replayed the game, got to 111, stopped, and then I did a playthrough where I did a speed run under 5 hours, and that was my third playthrough. And it was when we kind of were discussing, let's start doing these podcasts again, that I kind of returned to that, managed to get the achievement of 100%ing the game in under 20 hours, which is incredibly achievable when you know where you're going. And then I've just kind of played a lot of Hollow Knight in the last few months, and managed to finally be able to beat Pure Vessel consistently enough that I was like able to do that Pantheon where you fight him at the end and get that 112% on all 3 save files, as well as doing like the journal and all like the very mundane stuff that it's just an excuse to like travel around the world and revisit the areas, listen to the music, fight the enemies. I have completely rinsed Hollow Knight to the point that I'm now considering like genuinely trying to complete the Pantheon where you have to beat every boss in the game in a row, other than the fact that every attempt takes about 40 minutes, because it doesn't
It's
get
like an average game of League of Legends.
it doesn't get hard until like the last like 3 or 4, and by that point you're so tired. It's just
It's an endurance challenge.
I mean, for me, it's definitely a tale of like 2 games where I really enjoyed the base game and thought it was like a very solid Metroidvania, but it's only since like unlocking this like really hard content that I've become like an obsessive, and I've like gone back and like, replayed the game, and like I'm tempted to like, do I do that Steel Soul mode where if you die,
mode probably is really fun.
Yeah, but I'm also like, I think I've done everything I can do.
Yeah.
With this game, I think I've just completely like absolutely, I've got my £15 worth, 100%.
Plus interest.
Yeah, that is true. I'm tempted to buy the game on Xbox, even though I have Game Pass, its own Game Pass, just to give them more money.
Yeah, you should have been there for the Kickstarter. They should have like a post-game Kickstarter, where they're like, look, come on, look at what we already did. How sick was it? It'd be the only thing humanity has achieved. Where you look back and it's like, actually, not only is like the pre-launch hype, was it a lot, I imagine, like the retrospective looking back on Hollow Knight, like is like you have to just like realize of how great an achievement it is to just fucking like 3 or 4 people made this game.
It's just one of the most ridiculous things that happened.
Just like put it up there with like mankind landing on the moon. You know, they also made Hollow Knight.
I wish this was the cultural equivalent of making fire for the gaming industry.
I hope it is. I hope it is. This is like we've maxed out humanity's tech tree. It's like we've achieved Hollow Knight victory. Make Hollow Knight.
Does anyone have any like kind of like other like little like moments or like parts they want to talk about from the game?
I just want to say like yeah, there's so many like small tiny moments that you're filled with. There's the side character that has like a crush on the main character of some kind. I never even finished that quest line, but it's just a very like funny little neat character detail that comes up.
Tony,
I mean,
Zota,
Myla.
The Zoe thing.
Myla, I think.
No, it's not Myla. That's the miner.
Oh, no,
what's
you're
she
right.
called? Oh
She's
no,
I don't remember.
Britta.
I mean,
Hollow Knight.
yeah,
Was
her
it? Yeah, I think.
Britta.
her affections then do move over to Zote.
But then they dwindle if you keep
right.
fighting the. If you kind of go into her basement, you can find a statue of Zote, and if you dream nail it, you can fight like her idealized version of what Zote is, which is a very hard to fight boss. And if you beat it a certain number of times, she'll eventually run away and become an explorer herself. And it's a very like sweet
That's
kind
funny.
of quest line that they've like hidden in there. There's a lot of like little stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm currently fighting the hidden sub boss where it's essentially like how many Zotes can you fight before you die.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah, which is way harder than it looks. But,
Yeah, I've not played that, but I've seen someone do that, and they look annoying, those Zotes.
yeah, it's amazing how like people found this because it's so hidden. It's ridiculous. Like there is no way anyone could ever stumble across this.
There are so many like hidden things in this game, but the game, like even if you go in blind, you do just a great job. Like the game does a great job of making like these secrets like feel like great secret accomplishments that you found, you know, from dungeon delving, but really doing like a lot of like subtle game design to make it like actually harder to miss than not. The great and most obvious example being the entrance to the hive, where it's like behind a false wall, but it kind of baits you into using a ranged attack on some nearby enemies, and if you do that, then you will obviously break down the wall as well, and that's a great like it's like you're teaching a child to do something, you know. You got to make them think that they can come up with it themselves, you know.
Yeah, it's as well. I think one of the first destructible walls you come across is like next to one of the geopiles that you hit with your sword. So you'll probably also accidentally hit that and then realize that you can destroy walls. I think there's. I mean, I've definitely watched a video just saying how good the opening of Hollow Knight is for just telling you how you interact with this world without having to tell you. And I mean, it helps that pretty much your whole interaction is press X, but still very good.
Oh yeah, that's my biggest criticism of this game is multiple times I've actually injured my thumb playing it, because you have to hold down A to jump higher, and attack is on X. So like there was like a 3-day period where I was just trying to like, I think it was when I was trying to get Pure Vessel done, and I actually like had like I like fully had like injured my thumb from pressing into the button too hard. So yeah, that's a big criticism of it, is that it's too addictive. That it actually makes you hurt yourself.
That's a mark of pride, you know.
That gives me a longer
wound
nail.
before. True. That's your unbreakable strength. That's your grub song.
We should have challenged ourselves to just slip in all of the charm names just under the radar.
We probably did a good attempt of that, right?
Has anyone got any real like big criticisms of it that they can think of?
When starting, I wasn't really feeling it because I felt it was taking too long to get some of the unlocks. because it feels very slow and not that fun when it's just I can walk and I can hit things. So for me, I sort of very nearly kind of bounced off that intro being like the combat doesn't feel fun for me. Exploration sort of feel like it takes a while. Don't really feel like I'm reaching much. But it was like getting dash, and then sort of after that really going into the City of Tears, feeling the exploration, beginning to feel the combat a bit more. Once you get the Mantis claws, then it's just like, yeah, the world is my oyster, and it's actually becomes very fun to fight and explore, which I feel like is kind of lacking in the opening. That's like the one criticism I have, that it felt like I had to kind of get to the other side of like the opening moments.
It's fair, but then the one thing I would say about that is that because you feel so underpowered towards the start, as you go along and you unlock new abilities and you just get more experience playing the game, you can really, really feel yourself and your character getting stronger at Hollow Knight. But on subsequent playthroughs especially, I can imagine that being kind of boring when you know how good you can be at navigating and accessing certain areas and just basically being quite agile and, I guess, having dexterity. No, not dexterity, but I can't. My mind's too dark.
Just speed.
Yeah, exactly.
Having adaptability to different situations. Having resistance to the problems it throws at you. You also you have the intelligence to understand new problems. You have the strength to overcome them.
Yeah, I think
the endurance to persevere.
I think my feeling is you could probably start with the dash ability, and it would still feel kind of all right. Like I think because the game is good enough in itself, just that as you play it, you get better at it. That I don't think it necessarily needs that kind of power up necessarily of unlocking your kind of movement tools. But I mean,
I do like that you don't get start with a double jump, right?
Yeah.
I think the contrast is very strong, which does.
Yeah. I think double jump should definitely be a kind of unlocked thing. The Mantis claws I could give or take, and dash I kind of feel like you should possibly start with. But just because I feel like there's enough of the game where like I had dash, I had Mantis claw, and like the feeling of getting stronger was upgrading my nail, getting better at the combat system, exploring the world, picking up new notches and charms, and creating a build that was right for me. That like I don't think I needed to start at the rock bottom to feel like I was powering up.
Fair enough. Yeah, I personally want to give this game a 0 out of 10 because I can't beat Radiance, even though I haven't even tried it that much. And my controllers are dead.
Yeah.
Lame.
I think it does do
Lame.
a harsh thing like with Radiance and NKG and Pure Vessel where they do 2 masks of damage. That kind of that really punish. I think it's mostly the bosses where it really wants you to learn the rhythm, where like it will give you the 2 mask of damage. Which sucks, like I say, for me, because like I take damage all the time. I'm really bad at avoiding taking damage. But like it is
I've not beaten
just
those,
forcing you to learn, I think.
Even though I've not beaten those 2 bosses, I would like to, and I think for very, very late game extra bosses that you don't have to do, I think it's acceptable for a boss to be as challenging as those 2. And for
I
you
agree.
to have to actually be really, really skilled at Hollow Knight to do them well, because it's not like you're stuck in a room with 15 enemies and it's just really hard because it's kind of bullshit. It's that classic like it's hard but it's fair, you know. You do have to spend time investing energy into learning the fight before you can really start to be quite effective at it. You can't just go in blind and expect to do it first time. And I think for a late game boss that's optional especially, I have absolutely no issue with anything like that. I actually kind of welcome that sort of challenge.
I think for me the boss that I really hate and is really was the big gate when I first played the game, and I think is also maybe like a part I think I would really criticize is like the way Watcher Knights functions is essentially have you upgraded your nail or not, because like I'm sure people are good enough to I'm quite good at this game and I'm doing Watcher Knights now and they're kicking my ass and I can dash through them, which you can't actually do when you do the real fight. And I'm very OP and I just die to Watcher Knights. Like, there you go. I just find this, maybe it's just me. I think this boss is like a pure DPS check, like a bit like Belgargoyles. It's like, can you do enough damage to kill it before all the other ones spawn in, or Four Kings, I should say. And because it's gating off one of the 3 kind of watches you need to get to finish the game, it is one of those challenges. I remember hitting my head against a brick wall for like ages. When I did my 5-hour speed run, I was on par like to beat the game under 4 hours. I was at about 3 hours and being like right near the end, reaching Watcher Knights and almost failing the speed run because of how long it took me to beat Watcher Knights without upgrading my nail. Yeah. So for me, it's one of the like the poor. I don't really enjoy a couple of the fights like Dung Defender, but that's also just because I've done them hundreds of times at this point that I'm just bored of them. But yeah, Watcher Knights I think is my big boss criticism, and my big mechanical criticism is I don't think the way Geo works, like as compared to Souls, so like the corpse run mechanic works better in Dark Souls, I guess I'll say, because Geo is so different to the way Souls work in the Dark Souls series. But also it's a bit punishing for new players, like the fact you need that lantern really to be able to do deep nest, and that lantern is so expensive, and like it kind of like discourages exploration in a weird way. But then also I understand the other point that if that mechanic wasn't there, you wouldn't have those great moments like the kind of banker, and you wouldn't have that level of tension about trying to find the map because there'd almost be no consequence for dying. So I do understand the point of it, but I don't think it's amazing. But yeah, I think they'd be my 2 big criticisms of the game.
I've remembered another criticism I have. Juxtapose, this is a late game criticism compared to my other one, which is part of why I haven't completed Radiance or the final trial in the Colosseum of Fools, is because with Radiance it's having to fight Hollow Knight beforehand, and like that's a fight that is kind of easy now. Like I've not lost to that in any of my attempts, but it's just busy work before attempting something that I'm still trying to learn, and so possibly I just get destroyed in the first 5 seconds of fighting Radiance.
Yeah.
So that to me is just like, well, you're just, it doesn't feel like you're respecting my time here. And sort of similar with the Trial of the Fool, whatever the last one is, where it's like,
God, yes.
I can do, most of that pretty all right up until the bit where it's jumping from the walls.
Yeah, that's
I've only
the hard
passed
bit.
Yeah, I've only passed that once, and then because I was learning the boss fight at the end, I got killed in the boss fight, and then I've never managed to get back to that boss fight again.
That's harsh. That's so harsh.
So, like, that's why I've not completed those 2 bits, because it's just like, yeah, do I want to spend... I think possibly more with the Colosseum thing, because that is it's long time.
It's about 15 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just... so for me, that's why this is the point where I've kind of gone, right, this is where I'm stopping the game. I've got what I want from it. To kind of push it any far would kind of just perhaps sour it for me at the end, and why I know I don't really want to go on to the Godhome stuff beyond just maybe trying a few of the bosses again. I wouldn't want to do any of the boss runs just because I'd find it just too much time.
What you need is a pandemic where you just have nothing to do, so you can get really into like just getting 110 and 11-12% in this game.
Who knows what will happen in the next couple of years before we next do a podcast?
I'm actually sad right now thinking about me having finished Silksong and how that's gonna happen one day. I'm like Simon's gone. I'm like, oh god, there's gonna be a day where I've done everything there is to do in Silksong, and then I'm gonna have to wait 10 years for the next one. Oh.
I do agree with everything that Jonathan said, especially about how you want to learn the boss fight, but getting to the boss fight is so hard that it kind of exhausts you getting to it, and then you've got to go through another challenging section to get back to it if you actually want to defeat something. And I think it's a really really similar thing to this. Obviously, this is like a very generic thing to say, but it's very similar to what happens in Dark Souls and those games where
Yeah.
going back to a boss fight can sometimes mean going through a very long-winded and quite challenging run to get to a boss that's probably not as hard as the run you're doing, but because you get to the boss and you don't have the Estus to actually do the boss, you can't do it, and you don't feel like you can properly learn the boss or experience it. And to be honest, I would happily take a boss that probably has 50% more health or 50% more damage if it meant that the time in between the checkpoint and the boss is like halved or reduced massively, so that I can actually get back to the part that I don't have much experience with and haven't done very much, to try and improve at that, rather than the thing that I have done time and time again, which is do the run back and back and back.
Yeah, it's why I do respect God Home and the fact that you can go and train up on the bosses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way I would have been able to do that fourth Pantheon without the ability to just practice against Pure Vessel.
Yeah, and not that I've played any of it, but I hear that with Elden Ring, that sort of has checkpoints before the bosses.
Yeah, they got rid of them.
And that sounds brilliant.
Because in like just today, the memory of the Old Iron King was a bit annoying. Every time I wanted to do Sir Aloy, I had to run through about like a minute and a half of very aggressive enemies that would take a couple of flasks off me. But yeah, like I think it isn't. It can be annoying, and it definitely like tests your patience. Yeah, I like having to do Hollow Knight every time, and then sometimes you'll forget to Dream Nail, and then you have to watch the credits. It just happened to me multiple times. Yeah,
That is funny.
So that's actually the second thing that I was going to say, as in my criticism, if I had one. And this is just something that I've realised on my second playthrough. I didn't really feel it in my first because I was still so new with Hallow Nest that I was happy to carry on exploring areas that I had already explored. But you guys might not agree with me, but I think that you get the ability to warp a little bit too late in the game, because at that point, there's a point in the game where you have to kind of go back over some areas that you've already been through that can be quite difficult to traverse. And it would be really, really great if I could, to get to the area where I need to do the thing, I could just warp there using the teleporting mechanic that they have in the game, rather than have to walk back through an area that I've already walked back through quite a few times and is starting to get a little bit stale at that point. Whereas I think, again, and sorry to bring it back to this, but I actually think that in Dark Souls you kind of get the Lord Vessel at the perfect time, because
when the game gets bad.
That's true.
No,
that is definitely true.
I don't even think that. That's just like...
No, but you're right. I mean, obviously the second half is not as... It doesn't have the quality of the first half, but it's good that you get the ability to warp when you have to go back to areas that you've already been through, rather than discovering areas for the first time, in which case I don't mind not teleporting, because I actually want to spend time in each location, exploring, discovering what it has to offer. So yeah, that's probably one thing that I'm a little bit less keen on.
I guess for me, I think the stag nest system is like generous enough. Stag network.
And they actually added
generous enough.
Yeah, I think they actually added a couple of stag stations in, so the version that we would have played is a little bit better for that as well. Like I think before, to get to like the abyss or the area around the abyss, that kind of like really the bottom layer of the map, they didn't have the hidden station. They actually added that in the first kind of patch / DLC. As well as adding like a boss for the hive to make it feel more like climactic, like just little like quality of life improvements that I think we've benefited from playing the game later. But I think I agree with Tony that this, I think I kind of, a lot of my enjoyment comes from being like, oh, I know how to get here quick, and using the stag station.
Yeah. It's one of the things I still enjoy is sort of thinking. At the like last moments I've been playing it, where it's kind of been bouncing between, do I try Colosseum of Fools, do I try the Flower Quest, do I try Radiance, or do I try and like just randomly explore a bit? where that is a bunch of me just sort of going, right, I feel like doing this, okay, so I want to go there, so I'll take that stag station and then I'll wander up through that bit.
Yeah,
And
I could tell you,
actually, maybe I'll take a detour around this way actually because I really like that area. Like that's one of my favorite bits is actually plotting out and thinking, in a way that I think is quite hard to do for a map. Like there's a bunch of games I think I've probably played where I've been frustrated that you don't have a fast travel, and then fast travel games where that's meant I've just not explored or got a feeling for the map.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's only like 2 points I can remember using the fact that you can teleport, and that's Traitor Lord,
ooh, that's clever.
and then just teleporting back whenever I failed a flower quest.
Yeah, I think the big one is that's really annoying is where they put God Home, and how annoying it is to get there. That's where I basically
You got to go to the junk pit, right?
Yeah.
Or some, whatever it's
so when I navigate the world, I normally put my warp next to the kind of elder bug, so I can always just I can do what I need to do and then warp back to the top layer, and then I can take whatever stag station I need. That's the way I normally use it. But I think I normally just keep it permanently next to the God Home bug at the junk pit because I just do not enjoy getting to that area. I would, to be fair to them, they had to create a new area to house that DLC. House Dylan's Burger. They managed to hide it in that corner. So I can't complain too much, but yeah, I think that's normally where I keep my teleporter.
Yeah.
We're getting to the mundane Hollow Knight chat now.
Yeah. God, what's your favourite start menu?
Oh God, the Zote one is quite good. It's quite hard to get.
Kind of just like the default one, I'll be honest.
The Zote one's great because Zote is humming the Hollow Knight theme, but also
yeah. Also, you know a cute little moment that I think is really really awesome that we hadn't mentioned. It's so small, but it's just it epitomizes so many things about this game that are really really good and just such clever small little things that take probably not that long to implement. But I love how when you go into a tram, you hear an 8-bit version of the main theme or the theme in the central, the first area of the game. I can't remember what it's called. That's just such a cute little detail that they implemented. That is an example of it's just one of many in this massive game.
I'm just trying to think of some other little things, random bits I like. There's a Moss Knight that's just staring off across a lake or something, and I don't know, I just enjoy that little moment of just you're kind of still a guy.
Yeah.
And another fun bit is just, I mean, I love Quirrell, and your final moment with him is just very sweet, and as well with the stag. Just once you unlock all the stations, and then he takes you to this place that he's remembered, and it's their breeding grounds, and he wonders if there'll ever be another like him. Just that moment was just so. I don't know. That was another moment that hit me. Just a surprisingly emotional moment for a story about bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree that sometimes it does just hit you with those moments where you're just kind of wordlessly stunned. Of the sense of, I think melancholy is the most powerful emotion. It just reminds me of the Dark Souls 2 Majula's theme, that sort of that's the vibe that I'm getting from Hollow Knight.
The way it manages to make characters from what could just be interactive systems, the fact that your mapping system is corner for a dude that you fall in love with, that your fast travel, the cart you take to Whiterun is a guy you chat with, get to know, and then share a very poignant moment with. That's the shopkeep
you've spent the entire game being like, man, this guy's stingy, is actually the fucking ultimate swords master who, once you meet all his students, teaches you like the forbidden sword
Also,
technique or whatever.
it has a
Like,
hilarious boss fight.
it's a great twist reveal.
If you've seen the boss fight with that character in the Colosseum of Fools, the final stage being he just like jumps around like Yoda does in Attack of the Clones, and is basically impossible to hit.
Oh, man.
It's one of those
Yeah.
great panic moments
pretty
alongside
funny.
the one when the first time you beat Soul Master, and then or Soul Tyrant, whichever one is the original one, and he starts slamming into the ground. You know, it's one of those great another one of those great fake outs.
Yeah, the fake out death animation's very funny. Man, I think like as much as I do want to go through and like do like a cleansing run of Hollow Knight where I'm like all the stuff that I haven't done yet, like I haven't found all the grub worms, I haven't done a lot of like the Colosseum stuff. I don't even think I've done the flower run on my save yet, even though I did it like twice on Ethan's. Yeah, like as much as I do want to go down and like experience this content, as much as I do want to finish Radiance eventually, I kind of do want to like keep like a little bit of the mystery of Hallow Nest, you know, if I went back to it, I might see something I haven't seen yet, you know. I feel like I would lose that if I went through and like 112% of the game, whatever.
Yeah, keep the dream alive, you know.
Yeah, keep that little
Don't
that
go
little
hollow.
sense of mystery, that sense of like this dying world filled with secrets.
One thing that I do also like as well is that there are so many video games that I've played that I kind of just blast through, and I feel like I don't appreciate the level of love and passion that's been put into the game, and especially its art style and just the landscape that you're in. But in Hollow Knight, there's a few rooms scattered here and there, I think more on the edges of the map, where it's just a balcony, or it's just like a small conservatory that you can stand in, and there's nothing to do in that room. It's just you get to stand there and you just get to see like the life of this world in one room. I think the best one's probably in Queen's Gardens, where if you go as far left as you can on one of the levels, there's just basically a small glass room that you can go in that separates you from, I guess, the outside. I know it's just more of Queen's Gardens, but it's just a really, really nice moment where you can stand there and go, wow, like a team of people actually created this. They drew it out. They coloured it in. They made it vibrant. They brought it to life. And it's in those moments where I really feel like I can fully appreciate the game. I mean, it's just this beautiful mosaic of dragonflies and different plants and creatures just in one room that separates yourself from that's separated by just a glass pane, basically. And there's a couple of areas like that. I think it's just really, really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, where you just sit back and appreciate the beauty.
Yeah, early on there's just a hot springs that you can visit that's by one of the benches. It's just this charming little area that you can just sit and recharge your soul energy.
Mm-hmm. And I think on these sweet little notes, we should possibly try and move on and give it a score.
Yeah, we should.
Otherwise, we will just ramble endlessly on.
I know, God, when I pressed install game on Hollow Knight for the first time, I didn't know what I had ahead of me. Yeah, it's much like how I like want to continue the mystery of Hollow Knight by not fully exhausting it. I want to continue the joy of the Mediate podcast by dragging it out as much as I can. But we should get to giving some scores. So what's the order we should go in then?
I don't know, Tony, you either go
Am I
first
setting-
or last 'cause it's your pick.
Okay, I think I should set the stage. Hollow Knight, it's an amazing game. Like, the more I talk about it, the more I realize that they really created something very special. Just a team of such a small amount of people managed to fire on all cylinders, like perfectly execute in so many different aspects of what a game can be. The sense of space, the sense of like a story and world and history, as well as all the fun things, the challenge, the exploration, a great soundtrack. It's really like a symphony where all the pieces are being played perfectly and it comes together in this great, great overarching, complete story that I wish there was more of. I want to go back to Hollow Knight. I want to be fumbling around in the green path and the forgotten crossroads for the first time, not knowing where to go, puzzling together like what is it? Where does this paper trail lead? Why is that ledge just out of reach? But hopefully I'll get the chance to do it all over again in Silksong. So I'm gonna say Hollow Knight. It's got a little something for everyone. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go next?
I'll step in and just very briefly say that it's another 10. For all the things I've said before, the problems I have, like I can oversee the start issues because that was so long ago, and like the current issues I have of length, I already feel fully satisfied by the game. Like I don't feel like that's stopping me from doing anything that makes it feel terribly incomplete for me. I feel like I have completed Hollow Knight and have enjoyed it as one of my favorite games. So yeah, a 10 from me.
I almost want to go in and change my score because I can see someone's already I've given it a 10 on the spreadsheet.
It's just an educated guess.
Yeah. I think I'll go next because then that'll put Ethan under pressure. And it's the last episode, Ethan knows he's got to do the right thing here.
Do the right thing and throw the trash can through Sal's window.
Exactly, because of the implication, But yeah, as the only member of this podcast has actually played Hollow Knight and completed it, I can say, yeah, it's a 10. It's really good. Good game. One of my favourites. I'm never gonna play it again though, because never playing Hollow Knight again. I've if I kept playing it, I might reduce it because I'd be like, oh, this isn't actually that good because I've just done everything in it so many times. It's gonna be boring to me. So yeah, incredible game.
All right, Ethan.
It is a brilliant game. I'll explain first of all my main takeaway with this game, and then I'll give it a score. So I keep you guys in.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah, I know, in suspense a little bit.
God.
So
the only main show 40. While
I was playing this game, there was something that gave it momentum all the way through, and it was and if you take away the fact that it's a fun game to play and the NPCs are fun to talk to and boss fights are fun and everything is fun, there was something that was actively making me want to fulfill my quest. And I'm sorry to bring it back to this, but this is what Dark Souls doesn't do very well, which is throughout Dark Souls, you're kind of on this vague journey to do something that the fate of all of humankind is basically on the line here. But the thing is, as you're walking through Lordran, it's very, very rare for you to get to an area where you're like, this is worth saving. I mean, when I'm walking through Blighttown, I'm not thinking, I really hope I can fulfill this quest so that Blighttown can carry on existing. And as fun a game as Dark Souls is, there isn't really an emotional core to it. And I think all the Soulsborne games are guilty of this, and I don't think it's something that they're trying to do, because all their plot lines are very kind of obscure and cryptic. But if the games weren't as fun as they were, it would be very difficult for me to carry on playing them, because I don't feel particularly motivated to save the world. And Hollow Knight kind of has the same premise, where you are trying to save something on the brink of, I guess, like total corruption, and then you end up sacrificing yourself. I think, kind of like you do at the end of Dark Souls 1, if that's the ending that you choose, that is. But throughout Hollow Knight, even though you go to a lot of hostile areas, you do get some really vibrant places that are just full of life and show you exactly what there is to offer. And the opening area that you go to, Dirtmouth, even though it's not as beautiful as the Shire in the Lord of the Rings, I still feel like it functions the same way, where it's this really amazing place that's kind of small and secluded from all the horrors that are away from it. But as you're playing the game, you're thinking, right, I need to fulfill this quest for the sake of Dirtmouth, for the sake of the people who live there that have done no wrong, that are innocent, that just want to carry on living. I've got to fulfill this for them. And it was just something that was going all the way through my mind that meant that when I got to the end, even though you don't really see clear evidence of this, you do feel like you've succeeded in doing what you wanted to do and had to give your life for it. At least that's my interpretation anyway. So I think that's the fact that it has an emotional core to it when other games a lot like it don't is I think the biggest part of why I think I will give this a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Apart from all the other reasons that I've said, that I think is the main thing going for me. The fact that you want this world to carry on thriving, even though there are a lot of dangerous, hostile areas. There is enough good in there, that there are enough good bugs around that you wanna do this for them.
Wow, that's a great sentiment. I'm so glad we could all come on this journey from me presenting VA 11 Hall A and it being the most hated video game of all time, to us coming around to doing Hollow Knight.
10666.
Okay, it's not Sonic 06 levels, but to coming to Hollow Knight and everyone agreeing that it is in fact a bang up masterpiece. That's a lovely journey. And it's a great note to end on. Question mark? Mediate will continue in Avengers Endgame Part 2. Thank you all for watching.
We almost did a whole podcast without mentioning a Marvel film.